Hello, everybody. This is Sineve. I'm here to read chapter 6 of Somewhere in the Snow, Eyeless Jagex Reader. It is called A Crashing Experiment. Hallways and hallways. They were filled with endless rooms, rooms that had someone in there. Many that were abandoned, abandoned because some people went on and lived somewhere else, abandoned because many people died and passed on. Those rooms would be replaced or left alone, maybe even forgotten. Smile, stop messing around with my dogs, you yelled. 2 days, 2 days of taking care of these grown ass men and their dog. At this point, they were seen as extra work. It also felt like time was slower than when they were around. Smile, a weird dog with a big appetite. Sometimes he would be like any other dog until he was hungry. He would be more aggressive whenever you didn't give him food, forcing you to go in town almost every few hours. Why was he weird? Well, there was a smile, and the fact he would stare and stare and stare at you for hours straight. Jeff acted like a teenager most of the time. He would threaten you, call you insults, more complaining. Basically, he was hard headed. Whenever he would threaten you, it would be so detailed, sometimes you would get nauseous after. You learned many things ever since he came along. By many things, you meant that he was a fucking sadistic killer who had no remorse, of course. He could never be trusted. Jack, helpless, you felt bad for him because he had to deal with Jeff all the time, and because he was mostly in pain and probably had a lot of headaches. He never talked whenever you were around, but you knew he would talk when he and Jeff were alone. Jeff would complain that Jack got to be untied, but it was obvious why he was. It was because you kinda had trust in Jack to not do anything to you. He liked his company. Smile, don't you dare steal Hunter's food, you warned Smile. You dropped the bucket full of morning soup in the ladle. He ran towards Smile and Hunter as they both had a stare down. Smile just smiled, and Hunter growled and snapped at him. Hunter, Smile! You stopped in your tracks once you were right in between them. You almost slipped as you pushed them both away. You grunted as you dragged Smile. He let you, mostly because he just stood his ground and smiled at Hunter. And that meant something bad. You knew Smile was stronger than your dogs. Smile was dangerous, and most likely more dominant than all of them. You had to keep an eye on him because of those reasons. I'll get you food later. Please just let me feed my dogs first. He spoke. He stopped smiling and tilted his head at you. Why does he always have to be this difficult? Your eyebrow twitched and your nose wrinkled out of frustration. Ugh, just follow me. You escorted Smile inside. You really needed to feed your dogs, and you and Smile entered the house and inside the room which held Jack and Jeff in. Hey, Ryan, Jeff tuned once he saw you enter in the room. His hands were tied up, but he could still stand up. He sat on Jack's bed frame. They were probably talking or something, and Jack was sat up from his bed, and he was getting a little better in the past few days. Jack stared at you with his hollow mask, his legs crossed, and his back was supported by the opposite frame Jeff was currently on. There was a little moment of silence before Jeff spoke. Fuck you, Smile, Jeff spat. He furrowed his eyebrows, and Jack just turned to Jeff from his outburst. It was weird how Jeff would speak to Smile as if Smile could respond. Sometimes you would hear things inside your mind whenever Smile would stare at you. It kind of felt like you were getting drowned up into the dog's eyes. Or maybe you were just crazy. Just being near and taking care of these guys were having a big impact on you. You raised one of your eyebrows in confusion and lowered it back down as you narrowed your eyes at them. You made a little sound and began dragging Smile once again. Take care of your dog for me. I have my own I have to take care of, he punily said as you walked out. I would, but then you kinda timed me up. Slam. You closed the door shut behind you and went on with your day. You felt bad for your dogs. You couldn't go out and sled with them as much because you didn't trust them being there alone. The snow that picked up from your boots was left behind you. You heard a loud bitch from Jeff that came out through the room. Coming out from the house, you feel the cold atmosphere surround your exposed skin and through tiny openings from your thick clothing. You breathe out as fog was released from your mouth. You stretched out your arm and elbow, rotating it as he held your shoulder with the other hand that was clothed with your gloves. You could already hear the other dogs that were left outside, waiting impatiently. They were already pretty impatient, but they were particularly whining more than ever and almost ripping out of their leashes. You yawned as you started to stir the soup again. Kibble and raw meat moved around as you stirred the soup. It kind of looked good. You seemed to stare and think about eating it whole, but you flushed the idea out of your mind. You knew the kibble and raw meat wouldn't taste good to a human, and overall the texture of it. You move on to your routine. You still had Finn, Stella, Archie, Juno, and Ren left to go. And then you had to scoop their shit off the snow, but you needed to focus so you could get it over with. As you scooped up Finn's soup and put it into his bucket, you thought about how you could expand their runs without worrying about Smile, Jeff, and Jack. Maybe I should take them with. Maybe Smile could join. Wait. You shook your head. It was a stupid idea, or was it? It could benefit Smile's usefulness and help out your dogs. Maybe you could teach Smile the commands he had to be. He had more understanding for a dog, and he was extraordinary. But what about the other two males? They were definitely not to be trusted, especially Jeff. Maybe not too much of Jack, although. Shit, you realized as you looked out in the open area as you walked toward Stella's bucket to fill it up. Maybe you could let them go out while you did your thing. You already knew what to do, so multitasking wouldn't be a problem. It was risky, but it was worth a shot. Maybe not right now, but later. You sighed softly before leaving Stella and going up to the upcoming dogs. It was worth a shot, you repeated in your mind. Yells and screams of insults and questions boomed out the room. When did the sky ever stop? You grumbled as you supported Jack while he walked. It was quite funny. You had him dress up in thick clothing Docs had left. He looked like a marshmallow as well as Jeff. Jeff was on the floor screaming when you had left him there. All right, just stay in this spot. Don't move. You pointed at him as if he was one of your dogs. You really had to stop doing that. It was starting to become a bad habit. They weren't dogs after all, except for Smile. Snow crunched below your feet as you ran back to your house to get Jeff. But speaking of Smile, you almost forgotten about him. You stopped for a second before scanning the area, trying to spot Smile. Turns out he was just teasing the other dogs. Of course, that some of your dogs didn't understand what he was doing and just started yipping and yapping all over the place. Ace and Hunter were just trying to get to Smile. It seems like Archie and Finn were the only boys who didn't care about Smile. You rolled your eyes at the dogs before going inside to grab Jeff off the floor. Jeff grunted as you picked him up by his thick collar. You then go behind him and push his shoulders, taking him with you. You see Jack in the distance, just standing there before turning around to see where you were. Probably plotting something, but you knew he wouldn't do anything at this moment. What is this? Are we some kind of experiment? Also, what did you Maid just dress into? Jeff protested as you pushed and tugged him in the direction you put Jack in. Jeff tugged and pulled at you while you directed him. He was really fucking strong. It is an experiment, you blankly said before reaching the spot Jack was at and leaving Jeff there. All you both have to do is stay put and watch, I guess. But if you try to run, you won't be able to. That's the reason why I added more layers to your clothing. Jeff and Jack didn't acknowledge what you said, but Jeff just went on asking questions. What's that over there? A normal question. Finally, you thought before turning to where Jeff's eyes sat. It was the place where your sled linings, harnesses, and booties sat onto the snow. You don't pay attention, do you? You raised your eyes. You had their window wide open so you could see them and they could see you. Surprisingly, he didn't pay attention at all. He was kind of hostage, and there was nothing to do on that room after all. Nope. Jeff popped the pea, and in response, you shook your head, going off to get Smile and your dogs. You did your thing where you got each one of your dogs as they kept being noisy. You could hear Jeff complaining about your dogs from a distance. You put on their booties and harnesses, they tugged and pulled on the lining. You got yourself ready before putting yourself on the sled. Smile taunted the dogs beside them and started to jump around. You sighed before yelling a command to your dogs. Ready? Your dogs stopped making noises and some of their ears popped up. They all looked straight and lined themselves up. It took you a second as you watched Smile tilt his ears up and try to distract your dogs. They didn't seem to acknowledge him no more. You smiled as you saw Smile's confusion at their actions before you shouted out once again, "Hi!" You exclaimed as your dogs howled and started to run throughout the snow. You and your dogs passed Smile and the other two, some snow flying everywhere as the sled made a sound, cutting through the ground, leaving marks behind. The place you lived in had a large open space without trees. Not a lot of animals came in the way for this reason. Some did become curious, but then be scared off by the dogs. A minute in, and you hear a patter of another pair of feet following beside you. You turned to the sound, your focus now on to Smile as he panted. You blinked a few times as you didn't seem to believe what you saw. Smile? You raised your eyebrow and your cheeks lifted up. The two of you just stared at each other for a second before you started to get it. Maybe he could be useful, you thought, before having your dog speed up the normal. Smile was definitely faster, it seemed like. The dog seemed to notice his existence and started to pull more. That's off, you thought before noticing how your dog's strength increased as well as their speed. Looks like the others instead of Hunter and Ace started to get more competitive. The cold, freezing wind hit your face. You almost couldn't keep your eyes open as you kept narrowing and turning your head around. You turned your head down a little so the wind could hit your beanie instead of your eyes so you could keep your focus a little more. Damn, you thought, as every time you all turned there would be a little more impact than usual. You watched your dogs as they seemed to become tired. They started to pant more than usual, but they didn't seem to stop running. Hold it, you yell. They should have reacted faster, they didn't. You repeated your command, but they didn't stop. What the fuck? Stop, you said. It wasn't your normal command, but you knew that they knew what it meant. Nothing. They just kept running. You started to freak out. You started to ramble out more commands, but they just kept going straight and running. Hunter, Ace, you yelled out to the lead dogs, nothing. Finn, Juno? You panicked out to the swing dogs, nothing. Stella, Ren, you commanded out to the team dogs, nothing. Kina, Archie, the wheel dogs didn't answer, just like the other dogs. Absolutely nothing. This wasn't normal. Everything wasn't. You yelled and yelled as you hear your heartbeat drum to your ears. Why was this happening? You noticed how close you all were going to the forest. There was no spacing. At this rate, all of you were going to crash. All of you. Wait. Your eyes widened at realization, turning to Smile as you stared and stared at your dogs. He was the problem. Smile! You screamed. You cursed in your mind as he didn't respond or acknowledge you. You hear Jeff yelling in the distance and waving his arms. You didn't know what he was trying to tell you, but it didn't help for shit. Smile, stop, please! Your breath shook as you see you and your dogs get closer to the trees. You hear one of your dogs whine as they kept running. God, please no, you thought as you and your dogs were about to crash. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Shit, right! You yell as you grip loosened onto the bar you held. You hear Smile bark making a sharp turn to your dogs and sled. It didn't help, though. You and your sled crash into the trees. You see your dog slip and make it through, but you were already impacted. The sled crashed into the trees. Wood and pieces of the sled flew everywhere. You hear the impact and some of your dogs yelping at the sudden movement and get faded into sounds of the trees and you getting crashed along with the sled. Your eyes widen as time seemed to get slower, making you see and feel the fact that you are getting swallowed in between the open area and trees. You see Jack and Jeff in a distance and how your dog started to freak out and panic in pain. Everything was slow. That was no more, though. You crashed into the trees as you whimpered and screamed at the pain and impact. You felt yourself get dizzy as your sled was stuck in between some trees. The condition of the sled was scratched up with some pieces of the sled gone, as well was the other stuff that was left in there. You, on the other hand, had a ringing sound spin around your head. It was all muffled, though. You could feel you about to pass out, but you fought through it, as you're worried what will happen if you did close your eyes. You just laid there, breathing heavily, as you groaned and moaned all over the place. You needed to get up. This was your fault that this happened, all because of the experiment you wanted to do. You knew it was risky, but then again you didn't expect this to happen. You knew Smile was dangerous, but not this dangerous. You didn't know he had the capability to do this, or maybe it wasn't him. Maybe it was because you failed at being a musher. Dox was wrong. You weren't ready. But how could he expect this to happen? You whimpered at the throbbing feeling around your body. You couldn't get up. You gulped as you struggled to get up. Your legs felt like weak ice about to break. You probably broke a bone there and here, but that didn't matter. What mattered was the condition your dogs were. Only your dogs. The trees supported you up as you hear steps approaching. Ah, shit. Oh, wait, she isn't dead, you hear Jeff say in slight disappointment. You had your head down as you faced the snow while you held yourself up. Anyways, Wyatt, it was kind of hard running over here, but yeah, can I, finish the job if you're, you growled at Jeff's ramble. You knew Jack was also there. You could feel him bore into the state you were in. You let go of one of the trees with one of your hands before spinning away snow, swatting the spit that was in your glove away. Your breath hitched. Unknown POV. Ew, Jeff said as he saw spit flew onto the snow. Jack just turned to Jeff as he knew Jeff saw way nastier. Jack turned back to Wyan and saw her slowly turn her head up. She breathed heavily and she looked up with tears swelling in her eyes. Her face was scratched up a bit before she snarled her teeth. She started. Jeff set his eyebrows before taking his hand and putting it to his ear as if it'll increase his hearing. What? Can you say that again? Jeff asked as he leaned his head closer. I'm sorry, you're gonna have to speak. Smile! Oh. Author's note. Poor YN, poor dogs. That was Crashing Experiment. That was the 6th chapter. That will be all for today. We are 6 out of 18 chapters. Are y'all excited to hear what happens next?